Hey guys! This video is a redo of my 2012 watercolor tutorial. Hopefully this one is much more informative than the older one. If you're someone who has just begun using watercolors, I suggest you check out my last video, Beginner's Guide to Watercolors, where I explained the tools needed for watercoloring and other tips to help get you started before watching this one, because I'm not going to explain them here. Just think of this video as a continuation of that one. Alright, so let's get started. So the first thing you need is your line art. What I recommend for doing line art is that if you want to use fine liners, test them out to see if they would bleed on a scrap piece of paper before using them. I'll demonstrate to you guys what happens when you use fine liners that bleed. Alternatively, you can just use a pencil for your line art like I have here. Ideally though, what you would have is a sketch, your watercolor paper, and a light box so that you can trace your sketch onto watercolor paper using the light box so that you get a very clean line art. But I don't have such fancy equipment, so instead what I have here is my sketch on 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. I'm just going to show you guys how I finish my line art with just a mechanical pencil. Alright, so I just went ahead and finished the line art. Now my tip for you when you do line art, whether you use pencil or fine liners, is that you should make sure to erase thoroughly, because once you start coloring you can't erase any pencil marks very easily. So because watercolors are transparent, you will see those pencil marks. So make sure you erase a lot. After a lot of erasing, it's now time to color. So before I start watercoloring this, I'm going to show you guys two watercolor techniques that I use, and that is, hopefully you can see this. Let me make it closer. So the two watercolor techniques that I use is wet on wet and wet on dry. So I'm going to show you guys what I do to achieve these. So wet on wet, what I usually use it for is for gradients, while wet on dry is for shadows. I'm going to show you guys what wet on wet basically is and how it's done. So what I do is I put the lightest color. And this is called wet on wet because you're going to just start dropping in another color while it's still wet. So I'm just gonna now I'm going to show you guys what wet on dry is. So I'm just going to do a base layer. just gonna let that dry. So it dried, so I'm going to show you guys what wet on dry is. So this is called wet on dry because you're putting wet paint onto dry paint. So I'm just going to pick up some paint and show you guys. Alright, so let's start coloring the actual thing. So what I do when I watercolor is that I like to color in layers. So the first layer is the lightest color, the highlights, for watercolors, because they're a transparent medium. What you want to do is start with the lightest colors. So let's do that. So for the skin, what I do is I mix a yellow, and then a bit of red. And that's it. The first layer is done, so now I'm going to do the second one, which is the base colors. So when I mix these colors, what I usually do is I just add more pigments to the diluted colors I used in the first layer for highlights. This is just to make the colors darker for the base colors. So I just realized that the recording was cut short, but here is the finished product of the second base, and now I will do the last layer, which is the shadows. Again, I just add more pigment into the previous colors that I used, and to make them darker for the shadows. I use a lot of wet on dry for this, as I demonstrated to you guys earlier on. Alright, so that's all there really is to it. Hopefully that was of some help to you guys. If there's any questions, always feel free to ask. Again, if you're too shy, you're welcome to go on my Tumblr and ask anonymously. Well, that's all I really have to say for now, so